Dr. Zeftai pressed his scaled hand against the cool metal of the transport ship's window. Below him, the planet Kepler 442c stretched out like a brown and gray wasteland. No green anywhere, no blue oceans. Just endless dust and rocks under a dim red sun. Another dead world, muttered Crix from behind him. The insect-like alien clicked her mandibles in annoyance. Why do we always get sent to the boring ones? Zeftai turned to look at his team. 5 different species, all experts in their fields. All here because the Galactic Archaeological Consortium thought this planet might have some old ruins worth studying. The orbital scans had shown geometric shapes buried under the dirt. Probably just another primitive civilization that died out before they could reach the stars. Because, Zeftai said in his calm voice, boring planets often hide the most interesting secrets. The transport ship landed with a soft thud. Dust swirled up around the landing legs. Through the window, Zeftai could see the dig site. The scanner had detected structures about 2 meters below the surface. Simple excavation work. They would be done in a few days. Dr. Yilshan, the team's cultural expert, gathered her equipment. Her purple skin glowed softly in the ship's lights. The atmospheric readings are stable. We can work outside with basic breathing gear. Admiral Thokroon, their military escort, checked his weapons. The large gray-skinned warrior looked unhappy. I still think this is a waste of resources. Dead civilizations can't threaten anyone. That's exactly why we study them, Zeftai replied. To understand what went wrong. The team stepped outside. The air felt thin and cold. Their boots crunched on the rocky ground. In the distance, strange rock formations jutted up like broken teeth. The landscape looked like it had been dead for millions of years. Crix set up the excavation equipment. Her 4 arms moved quickly, adjusting sensors and drilling tools. The structures are definitely artificial, she announced. Metal and stone arranged in patterns. But the readings are weird. Weird how? Zeftai asked. Crix's large compound eyes reflected the scanner lights. The metal signature doesn't match anything in our databases, and the density readings suggest the structures are much larger than we thought. They began digging. The first layer of dirt came away easily, revealing smooth stone blocks. The blocks were perfectly fitted together without any visible mortar. Each stone was carved with intricate patterns that seemed to flow and twist in ways that hurt to look at directly. These aren't primitive, whispered Dr. Yilshan. She ran her fingers over the carved symbols. This level of craftsmanship requires advanced tools. Very advanced. As they dug deeper, more strangeness emerged. The stones were made of materials that shouldn't exist. Some seemed to absorb light, creating patches of absolute darkness. Others glowed with their own inner fire. The patterns carved into them shifted and changed depending on the viewing angle. This is impossible, Crix said, her voice filled with awe and confusion. My people have been working with advanced materials for thousands of years. I've never seen anything like this. Zeftai felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. His species, the Vorthons, were known throughout the galaxy for their logical minds and careful observations. But nothing about this site made logical sense. They uncovered what appeared to be a doorway. It was massive, easily 3 times taller than any of them. The door itself was gone, leaving only the frame. But the frame was decorated with symbols that made Zeftai's head spin. The more he looked at them, the more familiar they seemed. I've seen these symbols before, he said slowly. That's impossible, Admiral Thokroon growled. This is the first time we've found this site. No, not here. On other worlds. Different sites, different civilizations, but similar symbols. Always just a few, mixed in with the local writing systems. Dr. Yilshan pulled out her portable database. Her fingers flew over the controls, bringing up files from dozens of archaeological sites across the galaxy. He's right. Look at this. The Andromedans had similar marks on their temple walls. The Centaurians carved them into their tombstones. The extinct civilization on Rigel Prime used them as decorative elements. The team stood in silence, staring at the evidence. These symbols had appeared on worlds separated by thousands of light years and millions of years of history. Yet they were all clearly variations of the same basic designs. What does it mean? Crix asked. Before anyone could answer, her equipment started beeping frantically. She rushed to check the readings. Her compound eyes went wide with shock. The quantum dating results are in, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And, Zeftai prompted, these structures are at least 50 million years old, maybe older. The number hit the team like a physical blow. 50 million years. That was before any known spacefaring civilization. Before the Galactic Council. Before most species had even evolved intelligence. Check the equipment, Admiral Thockrun ordered. That can't be right. Crix ran the tests again. Then a third time. Each reading came back the same. The structures they were uncovering were impossibly ancient. But that means, Dr. Yilshan started to say, then stopped. Zeftai finished the thought. It means there was a spacefaring civilization millions of years before any of us existed, and somehow their symbols ended up scattered across the galaxy. They worked in stunned silence for the rest of the day. Each new discovery only deepened the mystery. The stones were arranged in complex patterns that suggested advanced mathematical knowledge. Hidden chambers revealed tools made from materials that seemed to bend the laws of physics. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the dig site, Zeftai stood looking down into the excavation. They had barely scratched the surface, yet already their understanding of galactic history was crumbling. "Sir?" Crix called from below. "You need to see this." Zeftai climbed down into the pit. Crix was standing beside a section of wall that had just been uncovered. Carved into the stone, much larger than the other symbols, was a clear representation of the galaxy itself. But this wasn't just any star map. It showed the positions of stars as they existed millions of years ago. With incredible accuracy. "Whoever built this place," Crix said quietly, "they knew the galaxy better than we do now." Dr. Yilshan joined them in the pit. Her usually bright purple skin had faded to a pale lavender. "This changes everything. If there was an advanced civilization this old, why don't we have any record of them? Where did they go?" Admiral Thockrun remained at the surface, speaking quietly into his communication device. Zeftai caught fragments of the conversation. Words like command and priority alert and possible threat assessment. The implications were staggering. An unknown civilization with technology far beyond current galactic standards. Ancient enough to have influenced multiple worlds. Advanced enough to map the galaxy with impossible precision. As night fell over the dig site, Zeftai looked up at the stars. For his entire career, he had believed that the current galactic civilizations represented the pinnacle of development. They were the inheritors of the galaxy, the first to truly understand the universe. Now, standing among ruins that predated his entire species by millions of years, he realized how wrong they had all been. The galaxy had been home to greatness long before any of them existed, and somehow, these ancient people had left their mark on worlds throughout known space. The question that kept him awake that night was simple, but terrifying. If this civilization was so advanced, what had happened to them? And more importantly, were they truly gone? Crix's forearms moved with practiced precision as she carefully extracted another artifact from the ancient chamber. 3 days had passed since they first broke through into the underground complex, and each discovery made less sense than the last. The device in her hands looked like nothing she had ever seen before. It was roughly spherical, about the size of her head, made from a material that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. When she held it up to the light, patterns swirled inside like living galaxies. "Another one for the impossible pile," she muttered, setting it down beside the other artifacts they had found. Dr. Yilshan looked up from her translation work. "What does this one do?" "I have no idea," Crix admitted. "Like all the others, it's completely beyond our understanding. My scanners can't even determine what it's made of." Crix was proud of her heritage. The Crix people had built the largest space stations in the galaxy. Their engineering was legendary. Other species came to them when they needed impossible problems solved. Yet here she was, staring at technology that made her feel like a primitive cave dweller. She picked up another artifact from the growing collection. This one was clearly a tool of some kind, with a handle that fit perfectly in her grip. When she had first touched it, the device had hummed to life, projecting a beam of energy that could cut through solid rock like it was soft butter. But the energy readings made no sense. The tool seemed to be drawing power from somewhere else entirely, possibly another dimension. "The power source alone represents a breakthrough we're centuries away from achieving," she said to no one in particular. Admiral Thockrun stood guard at the chamber entrance, but Crix could see his interest despite his military training. Even he was impressed by what they were finding. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering. The walls curved in impossible ways, creating spaces that were larger inside than outside. Crix had measured the room dozens of times, and the mathematics simply didn't work. According to her instruments, The chamber was simultaneously 30 meters across and over 100 meters across, depending on where she stood. Spatial folding technology, she whispered. They could manipulate space itself. Dr. Zeftai descended into the chamber carrying more lighting equipment. Any progress on the larger devices? Crix gestured toward the far end of the chamber, where 3 massive machines sat in perfect preservation. Each was the size of a small building, made from the same impossible materials as everything else in this place. I've been studying them for hours, she said. Near as I can tell, they're weapons. But not like any weapons we understand. She led the team to the first machine. Its surface was covered in what looked like targeting displays, showing star systems in 3-dimensional detail. But when Crix touched the controls, the display shifted to show not just planets and moons, but the internal structure of stars themselves. This isn't for destroying ships or armies, she explained. This is for destroying solar systems. Look at these energy output readings. A single shot from this device could destabilize a star, cause it to go supernova. The silence that followed was deafening. Admiral Thockrun spoke first. You're telling me these people had star-killer weapons? Multiple star-killer weapons, Crix corrected. And based on the wear patterns on the controls, they were used regularly. Dr. Yilshan had gone very pale. Regular use suggests either extensive testing or actual warfare on a galactic scale. Crix moved to the second machine. This one was even more complex, with controls that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. Her hands passed through some of the interfaces while others felt solid to the touch. This one appears to be a construction device, she said, but not for building ships or stations. It's for building planets. She activated a harmless display function. The machine projected a holographic star system, complete with a central star and empty space around it. Then, as they watched, the machine began showing how raw materials could be gathered from asteroids and gas clouds, how a planet could be constructed from scratch, how its orbit could be precisely calculated and established. They were making planets, Crix said in amazement, custom worlds designed for specific purposes. The third machine was the most disturbing. When Crix accessed its memory banks, she found star charts, but these weren't maps of the galaxy as it existed now. These showed the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago, with incredible detail and accuracy. They mapped everything, she said. Every star, every planet, every asteroid belt. They knew the galaxy better than we know our own home systems. Dr. Zeftai studied the star charts with growing excitement. Look at these markings. These symbols here, scattered across hundreds of systems. They match the architectural symbols we've been finding. Crix enhanced the display. The symbols appeared on worlds throughout the galaxy, marking planets that were now home to the major spacefaring civilizations. Earth, where humans supposedly evolved. 4th Prime, homeworld of Zeftai's people. The Crix colonies. The hegemony core worlds. This can't be a coincidence, Dr. Yilshan said. They marked every world that would later develop intelligent life. Admiral Thockrun stepped closer to examine the display. Or they marked worlds where they had already been. The implications hit them all at once. These ancient people, whoever they were, had visited every major world in the galaxy millions of years before current civilizations existed. They had mapped everything, built impossible weapons, and constructed planets from raw materials. Crix felt her scientific worldview crumbling. Everything her people thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. They weren't the first advanced civilization. They weren't even close. There's more, she said reluctantly. I found data storage devices, quantum crystalline matrices that can hold more information than our largest archives. She led them to a section of the chamber where dozens of crystal-like objects were embedded in the walls, each one pulsed with soft light, indicating active data storage. I managed to access one of them, she said. Just barely. The encryption is beyond anything we've developed. But I got enough to confirm what we suspected. She activated her portable display unit. Lines of text appeared, written in symbols that hurt to look at directly. But her translation software had managed to decode fragments. They called themselves humans, she read. And according to their records, they didn't just visit these worlds. They owned them. The entire galaxy was their territory. The word humans sent a chill through the team. It was familiar somehow, like a half-remembered dream. Keep reading, Dr. Zeftai urged. Crix scrolled through more fragments. They speak of other species, younger races that they were guiding, teaching. The translation is unclear, but it mentions Vorthan's Crick's hegemony species, all of us, by name. That's impossible, Admiral Thockrun protested. These records are millions of years old. Our species didn't exist then. According to this, Crick said quietly, we did exist. We just didn't know it yet. She continued reading, her voice growing smaller with each revelation. The humans had apparently seeded life throughout the galaxy, carefully nurturing the development of multiple species. They had guided evolution itself, shaping entire civilizations according to some vast plan. We're not natural, she whispered. None of us. We were all created by these humans for specific purposes. The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the ancient machines. Each member of the team was struggling to process what they had learned. Their entire understanding of their own existence was being rewritten. Dr. Yilshan was the first to speak. If this is true, where are they now? What happened to the humans? Crix looked back at the data crystal. I don't know. The records I can access end abruptly. But there are hundreds more crystals. Maybe thousands. If we can decode them all, we'll learn the complete truth about who we really are, Dr. Zeftai finished. Admiral Thockrun was already speaking into his communication device, calling for reinforcements and specialist equipment. This discovery was far too important to handle with a small archaeological team. As night fell over the dig site, Crix remained in the chamber, staring at the impossible machines and ancient data crystals. Everything she had believed about her people, about galactic civilization, about the nature of intelligent life itself, had been proven wrong in a single day. The humans had been here first. They had shaped the galaxy according to their will. They had created every species that now ruled the stars. The question that haunted her was simple. If humans were so powerful, if they controlled everything, why had they disappeared? And more terrifyingly, what if they hadn't disappeared at all? What if they were still out there, watching their created children stumble through the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to return? Admiral Thockrun stood in the command center that had been hastily constructed above the dig site. Banks of communication equipment surrounded him, connecting the archaeological site to Galactic Command headquarters thousands of light years away. What had started as a routine excavation had become the most important discovery in galactic history. Admiral, came the voice of Supreme Commander Vexhai through the communication array. Your preliminary reports are disturbing. Are you certain about these findings? Thockrun looked down through the transparent floor at the excavation below. Dozens of specialists from every major species had arrived over the past week. The site now resembled a small city, with prefabricated buildings and advanced equipment scattered across the barren landscape. I wish I wasn't certain, Supreme Commander, he replied, but the evidence is overwhelming. We're dealing with a civilization that possessed technology we can barely comprehend. He gestured to one of his aides, who activated the holographic display system. The command center filled with three-dimensional images of the artifacts they had discovered. These aren't just advanced tools, Thockrun continued. They're proof that everything we thought we knew about galactic history is wrong. The Starkiller weapons rotated slowly in the holographic display, their impossible geometry casting strange shadows on the walls. Even as projections, they seemed to radiate power and menace. The weapons alone represent a threat assessment level we've never encountered, Thockrun explained. A single device could destroy entire solar systems. And we've found dozens of them. Supreme Commander Vexhai's image flickered in the display. The aging hegemony leader looked exhausted. What about defensive capabilities? If these humans possessed such weapons, they must have had protection against similar attacks. That's where it gets even more disturbing, Thockrun said. He nodded to another aide who brought up new images. Dr. Crix has identified what appear to be planetary shield generators. But not shields as we understand them. These devices could apparently move entire worlds out of harm's way. The holographic display showed a complex machine that dwarfed even the Starkiller weapons. According to the analysis, it could manipulate gravity and space-time to relocate planets instantaneously across vast distances. They could move worlds like we move ships, Thockrun said. Entire solar systems could be rearranged at will. But the most shocking discoveries had come from the data crystals. Dr. Yilshan and her team of linguists had managed to decode several complete files. The information they contained had sent shockwaves through every government in the galaxy. Supreme Commander, Thockrun said carefully, We need to discuss the implications for current galactic borders and territories. He activated another display, showing a map of the galaxy as it existed millions of years ago. Human territory was marked in blue, covering virtually every habitable system. According to their records, the humans claimed ownership of the entire galaxy. Every world we now call home was originally theirs. The silence from Galactic Command stretched for long minutes. Finally, Supreme Commander Vex-High spoke. Are you telling me that all of our civilizations are essentially squatters on human territory? It's worse than that, Thakroon admitted. According to the records, we're not squatters. We're tenants. The humans deliberately placed our ancestors on these worlds. He brought up another file, this one showing detailed biological data. They didn't just give us planets to live on. They gave us the planets we were specifically designed for. Each species was created for optimal performance on particular types of worlds. The implications were staggering. Every major civilization in the galaxy had evolved on worlds that were perfectly suited to their needs. The Vorthons on high-gravity worlds with complex atmospheric chemistry, the Krix on low-gravity worlds with abundant metals for their technological development, the hegemony species on temperate worlds with diverse ecosystems that encouraged social cooperation. It wasn't natural evolution, Thakroon continued. It was directed development. The humans shaped our evolution, guided our development, and placed us on worlds that would maximize our potential. Dr. Zeftai's voice came through the communication system from the excavation below. Admiral, we've decoded another critical file. You need to see this immediately. Thakroon looked down to see the Vorthon scientist emerging from the main chamber, holding a data crystal that pulsed with unusual energy. Patch Dr. Zeftai through to command, Thakroon ordered. The scientist's scaled face appeared in the holographic display alongside Supreme Commander Vex-High. His usually calm demeanor was shattered, replaced by barely controlled excitement. Supreme Commander, we found records of the human colonization project, Zeftai said without preamble. It wasn't random. They had a specific plan for each species they created. He activated his own display system, showing complex genetic and sociological charts. The Vorthons were designed to be analytical and logical, perfect for scientific research and technological development. The Krix were created with enhanced spatial reasoning and multiple manipulation appendages for advanced engineering. The hegemony species were given strong social instincts and diplomatic abilities for governance and trade. Supreme Commander Vex-High leaned forward. You're saying we were all designed for specific roles? More than that, Zeftai replied. We were designed to work together. Our strengths and weaknesses complement each other perfectly. The humans created us as components of a larger system. Thakroon felt a chill that had nothing to do with the planet's cold atmosphere. A system designed for what purpose? Zeftai's expression grew troubled. That's where the records become unclear. The files mention something called the Great Work, but the details are encrypted at a level we can't break yet. Admiral Thakroon turned back to the communication array. Supreme Commander, there's something else. We've identified this planet's original designation in the human archives. He paused, knowing that his next words would change everything. This isn't just any human world. According to their records, this is Earth, the human homeworld itself. The silence that followed was absolute. Earth was a legend, a mythical world mentioned in the oldest stories of multiple civilizations. Most scholars believed it was just a shared cultural memory, a psychological need for all species to believe in a common origin point. That's impossible, Supreme Commander Vex-High finally said. Earth is supposed to be a paradise world, green and blue, covered with life. It was, Thakroon replied grimly. Millions of years ago. We found atmospheric analysis equipment that shows this world once had vast oceans and dense forests. The humans lived here for millions of years before something happened. Dr. Krix's voice crackled through the communication system. Admiral, I think I know what happened to Earth. All attention turned to the insectoid engineer, whose forearms were manipulating controls they couldn't see. I've been analyzing the stellar observation equipment the humans left behind, she said. They were tracking the life cycle of their sun with incredible precision. According to their calculations, the star began dying about 3 million years ago. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in. The humans didn't abandon Earth, she continued. They watched their sun slowly fade and made preparations. All of this, She gestured to the excavated structures around her. Was their final gift to the galaxy. Thokrun stared down at the ruins below. A gift? They knew their time was ending, Crix explained. So they spent their final millions of years ensuring that intelligence would survive in the galaxy. They created us, gave us suitable worlds, and left us the tools we would need to continue their work. Dr. Yilshan's voice joined the conversation. I've found confirmation of that theory. The final human records speak of seeding the galaxy with purpose and ensuring the continuation of consciousness beyond the death of worlds. Supreme Commander Vexhi's image flickered as he processed the information. So we're not just created beings. We're inheritors. More than that, Dr. Zeftai said quietly. We're their children, all of us. Every intelligent species in the galaxy traces back to human genetic engineering and social guidance. We are humanity's legacy. Admiral Thokrun looked around the command center at the representatives of a dozen different species, all working together to uncover the truth about their origins. For the first time, he understood why they cooperated so well despite their obvious differences. They had been designed to work together. Supreme Commander, he said finally, what are your orders? How do we proceed with this information? The hegemony leader was quiet for a long time before responding. Carefully, Admiral. Very carefully. This information will fundamentally change how every species in the galaxy sees itself. We need time to understand the full implications before we release these findings to the public. Understood, sir. But there's one more thing. Yes? Thokrun gestured toward the deepest part of the excavation, where teams were still uncovering new chambers. We're nowhere near the bottom of this site. If what we found so far is just the surface layer, there's no telling what else the humans left behind. As night fell over the dig site, Admiral Thokrun remained in the command center, staring out at the stars. Dr. Yilshan stared at the massive data crystal before her, its surface pulsing with patterns that seemed to respond to her thoughts. 3 weeks had passed since the team had first broken into the deepest chamber of the human ruins, and each day brought revelations that challenged everything. She thought she knew about consciousness and civilization. Her purple skin had faded to an almost transparent lavender from exhaustion and shock. As the team's specialist in xenopsychology and cultural development, she had been tasked with understanding not just what the humans had done, but why they had done it. The answers were more disturbing than anyone had imagined. Dr. Yilshan, came Dr. Zeftai's voice through the communication system. Any progress on the psychological profiles? She looked up from her workstation, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex human behavioral patterns and decision-making processes. Too much progress, she replied quietly. I'm beginning to understand their mindset, and it's terrifying. The data crystal before her contained the personal records of hundreds of individual humans from the final period of their civilization. Their thoughts, fears, hopes, and ultimate decision to abandon physical existence were all documented in excruciating detail. They weren't afraid of death, she said to herself, then activated the communication system to share her findings. Team leaders to the main chamber, please. I need to show you what I've discovered. Within minutes, the core team had assembled around her workstation. Dr. Zeftai, Crix, Admiral Thokrun, and several of the newly arrived specialists formed a circle around the holographic displays. I've been analyzing human psychological development over their final 1,000,000 years, Dr. Yilshan began. What I found doesn't match any known pattern of species behavior when facing extinction. She activated the first display, showing a timeline of human civilization. Most species, when faced with the end of their world, focus on survival. They develop new technologies, seek new homes, fight against the inevitable. The humans did none of these things. The timeline showed a curious pattern. As their sun began to die, human technological development had slowed, then stopped entirely. Instead of advancing their capabilities, they had turned inward. They could have easily moved to another star system, Yilshan continued. Their technology was more than capable. They could have built artificial suns, moved planets, even created pocket dimensions to live in. But they chose not to. Crix clicked her mandibles in confusion. That makes no sense. Why accept death when you have the power to prevent it? Because they had discovered something more important than survival, Yilshan replied. They had discovered the Great Filter. She activated another display, this one showing complex equations and philosophical concepts that hurt to look at directly. The Great Filter is a theoretical barrier that prevents civilizations from advancing beyond a certain point. Most species assume it's technological, that civilizations destroy themselves with weapons or pollution or resource depletion. Dr. HFY studied the equations with his analytical mind. But the humans discovered it was something else. They discovered it was consciousness itself, Yilshan said quietly. Individual consciousness, as we understand it, is fundamentally limited. It can only exist within the boundaries of a physical brain, limited by biological constraints and the speed of thought. She brought up recordings of human philosophers and scientists from their final era. Their words were translated into concepts that the alien team could understand, but the implications were still staggering. They realized that true advancement required abandoning individual consciousness in favor of something greater, Yilshan explained. A collective intelligence that could exist beyond physical limitations. Admiral Thokrun stepped closer to the displays. You're saying they chose to stop being individuals? More than that, they chose to stop being biological entities entirely. According to these records, the final generation of humans underwent a process they called consciousness transfer. They uploaded their minds into a quantum field that exists in the cosmic background radiation itself. The silence that followed was profound. Each team member was struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what the humans had accomplished. They became part of the universe itself, Yilshan continued. No longer limited by physical bodies or individual perspectives. They achieved true immortality by abandoning the very concept of individual existence. Crix's compound eyes reflected the light from the displays. But why create us? If they had achieved perfect existence, why bother with biological species? Yilshan smiled sadly. Because they discovered that consciousness transfer required a choice. It couldn't be forced or programmed. Each individual mind had to willingly abandon its individual nature and merge with the collective. It was essentially a form of voluntary death of the self. She brought up more human records, these showing the debates and struggles of their final generations. Not all humans could make that choice, she explained. Some were too attached to individual existence. Others were afraid of losing their personal identity. The final human generation was split between those who were ready to transcend and those who weren't. Dr. HFY was beginning to understand. So they created us to give those who couldn't transcend another chance. Exactly. But it was more complex than that. They realized that different types of consciousness might be better suited for transcendence. So they created multiple species, each designed with different psychological and cultural frameworks. The displays showed detailed analysis of each created species. The Vorthans with their logical, analytical minds. The Crix with their collaborative, engineering-focused consciousness. The hegemony species with their social, diplomatic nature. Each species represents a different approach to consciousness and existence, Yilshan explained. The humans wanted to see which types of minds would be most capable of making the final transition. We're an experiment, Admiral Thokrun said grimly. We're an opportunity, Yilshan corrected. The humans didn't create us to study us. They created us to give consciousness itself multiple chances to evolve beyond biological limitations. She activated the final display, showing records of the last human city on Earth. Millions of individuals standing in vast chambers, their bodies connected to impossible machines, their minds preparing for the ultimate journey. Their final message was simple, Yilshan read from the translated records. They wanted us to know that we have the same choice they did. We can remain as we are, living and dying as individuals, or we can choose to evolve into something greater. The recording showed the final moment as the last humans on Earth completed their consciousness transfer. Their bodies remained, but their minds had joined the quantum field that their predecessors had created. In an instant, billions of years of human history had ended, and something entirely new had begun. They're still out there, Yilshan said quietly. In the cosmic background radiation, in the quantum foam that underlies reality itself. They've become part of the fundamental structure of the universe. Crix was studying the technical aspects of the consciousness transfer process. According to these specifications, the technology exists. They left us the blueprints for the transfer chambers. Of course they did, Dr. Zeftai said. They want us to have the same opportunity they did. Admiral Thokroon paced around the chamber, his military mind trying to process the strategic implications. What happens if we refuse? What if we choose to remain as we are? Yilshan consulted the human records. Nothing happens. We continue, as we are until our suns die, our planets become uninhabitable or our civilizations collapse from other causes. The humans made it clear that the choice must be freely made, and if we choose to transcend, we join them in whatever they've become, a collective consciousness spanning the galaxy, possibly the universe, immortal, unlimited, and connected to every other mind that has ever made the same choice. The team stood in silence, contemplating the magnitude of the decision that lay before them, not just for themselves, but for their entire species, and ultimately for all life in the galaxy. Dr. Yilshan looked around at her colleagues, representing multiple species that had no idea they faced the same choice their creators had faced millions of years ago. There's one more thing, she said quietly. According to the human records, we're not the first species they created. They've been doing this for hundreds of millions of years, across multiple galaxies. Some of their created species chose transcendence. Others chose to remain biological. What happened to the ones who chose to remain biological? Dr. Zeftai asked. Yilshan's expression grew somber. They lived. They thrived for a while. And then they died out naturally when their civilizations reached their limits. The humans mourned each loss, but they respected the choice. And the ones who chose transcendence? They joined the collective consciousness and helped create the next generation of species, continuing the cycle. Admiral Thokroon stopped pacing. So we're part of an infinite chain of consciousness development, stretching back millions of years and potentially continuing forever. As long as there are minds capable of making the choice, Yilshan confirmed. The implications were overwhelming. Every civilization in the galaxy was facing the same test that humanity had faced. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the massive window of the Galactic Council station, watching ships from 100 different worlds drift past like glowing insects. 300 years had passed since humanity first reached the stars and found they were not alone. 300 years of careful diplomacy, trade agreements, and what the other species called quaint human customs. The council chamber behind her buzzed with the usual mix of languages, translated in real time by advanced computers. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered here to discuss trade routes, territorial disputes, and the endless small problems that came with so many different species trying to share the same space. Most days Sarah found the work rewarding. Today was not one of those days. Ambassador Chen, came a voice that sounded like grinding metal. She turned to see Vex Prime, the lead representative of the Zephyrian hegemony. His species looked like walking crystals, tall and sharp with faces that never showed emotion. We need to discuss the Outer Rim situation. Sarah kept her expression neutral. The Zephyrians had been testing boundaries for months now, pushing into human space, claiming that ancient mining rights gave them authority over systems humanity had colonized decades ago. It was all legal nonsense, but the kind that could spark conflicts if not handled carefully. Of course, Sarah said, though I hope you've reconsidered your recent actions regarding the human settlements. Vex Prime made a sound that might have been laughter. The settlements in question are on worlds that belong to the hegemony by right of first discovery. The humans living there are trespassers. Those colonies have been established for over 50 years, Sarah replied, her voice steady. The families there were born on those worlds. They are not trespassers. They are citizens of the Terran Coalition, protected by galactic law. Galactic law is complex, Ambassador. Sometimes old laws take precedence over new ones. Sarah had heard this argument before. The Zephyrians were masters at finding legal loopholes, ancient treaties, and forgotten clauses that could be twisted to serve their purposes. They had been one of the first species to achieve faster-than-light travel, thousands of years before humanity even learned to make fire. This gave them a sense of superiority that made negotiations difficult. Let me be very clear, Sarah said, stepping closer to the crystal being. The Terran Coalition has always respected galactic law. We have followed every treaty, honored every agreement, and worked within the system to resolve disputes peacefully. But those colonists are under our protection. Protection? Vex Prime tilted his head. From whom? The humans are newcomers here, Ambassador. You have been in space for barely 3 centuries. The hegemony has ruled these regions for millennia. What protection could you possibly offer? Around them, other representatives had begun to notice the conversation. Sarah could see the usual mixture of species. The bird-like Corvani with their bright feathers, the massive Thurlock who looked like walking boulders, the graceful Eldani with their flowing robes. All of them watched with interest. Disputes between major powers always drew attention. The same protection we have always offered, Sarah said quietly. Fair treatment, honest dealing, and the promise that we will honor our commitments. How touching, Vex Prime said. But what happens when your commitments conflict with galactic reality? The Outer Rim worlds contain resources the hegemony needs. The human populations there are inconvenient. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Inconvenient how? They resist our authority. They refuse to accept hegemony law. Some have even attacked our survey teams. Vex Prime paused. We have been forced to relocate them. Relocate them where? To facilities where they can be properly managed. Work camps, you might call them. Places where they can contribute to the greater good while learning to accept their new circumstances. The chamber had gone quiet. Other representatives were listening now, sensing that something important was happening. Sarah looked around the room, seeing faces that ranged from curious to concerned to completely indifferent. You have enslaved human civilians, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. We have relocated disruptive populations according to hegemony law. Vex Prime corrected. The same law that grants us authority over those worlds. Sarah took a deep breath. Every human diplomat was trained for this moment, though most hoped it would never come. There were lines that could not be crossed, principles that could not be compromised. The Terran Coalition had spent 3 centuries being reasonable, flexible, and diplomatic. But some things were not negotiable. Representative Vex Prime, Sarah said formally, I am now speaking as an official representative of the Terran Coalition government. You will release all human civilians immediately and withdraw from all disputed territories. The crystal being made that grinding sound again. Or what, Ambassador? Will you file a complaint with the Council? Perhaps organize a trade embargo? I am giving you 72 hours, Sarah continued as if he had not spoken. After that time, if even one human civilian remains in hegemony custody, there will be consequences. Consequences? Vex Prime seemed amused. What consequences could the Terran Coalition possibly impose? You have trade ships and exploration vessels. We have battle fleets that ruled this galaxy before your species learned to use tools. Sarah looked around the chamber. Representatives from dozens of species watched the exchange with interest. But she could see in their faces that most of them agreed with Vex Prime. Humanity was young, small, peaceful. What threat could they possibly pose to one of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations? 72 hours, Sarah repeated. Release our people and withdraw from human space. And if we refuse? Sarah met his crystalline gaze without flinching. Then you will learn why humanity spent so much time studying galactic history. Every war, every conflict, every species that thought they understood the price of aggression. We learned from all of them. Are you threatening us? Vex Prime asked, and now his voice had an edge to it. I am informing you, Sarah said. The Terran Coalition has exactly 3 red lines that we will not allow anyone to cross. The first is the enslavement of human beings. You have crossed that line. 3 red lines. The crystal being seemed genuinely curious now. What are the other 2? The systematic genocide of any sentient species, Sarah said, and the destruction of inhabited worlds, and how very moral of you, Vex Prime said. But morality without strength is just wishful thinking. 72 hours, Sarah said for the 3rd time. Then she turned and walked toward the chamber exit. Behind her, she could hear the buzz of conversation starting up again. Representatives were probably wondering if they had just witnessed the start of a minor diplomatic incident, or something much bigger. Sarah suspected that within a few hours, most of them would have forgotten about the conversation entirely. As she reached her private communications chamber, Sarah activated the quantum transmitter that would carry her message instantly across the galaxy to Earth. The woman who appeared on the screen looked tired but alert. "Admiral Torres," Sarah said. They crossed the line. The woman on the screen nodded slowly. "How long do we give them?" 72 hours. Understood. I'll begin the awakening protocols." The screen went dark and Sarah sat alone in the small chamber. Outside, the galaxy continued its normal business, unaware that everything was about to change. The Zephyrian hegemony thought they understood humanity. They thought they knew what 3 centuries of peaceful exploration and careful diplomacy meant. They were about to learn how wrong they were.